Hello, my name is Rick Houston, and welcome to the Scene Vault Podcast, your source for all things NASCAR history. Presented by Las Vegas Motor Speedway, America's racing showplace.
He keyed that mic, and he didn't yell it. He screamed it, F you.
Wow.
Well, boy, that pissed me off. And then Teresa comes on the radio, and she hollers at me 2 or 3 times, and I said, yeah. She said, can you see anything? And I'm sitting there looking at binoculars, and I see Schroeder go over there, and all. I didn't want to say anything over the radio, and I said, no, honey, I can't see anything. And I didn't expect anything. It wasn't about the money part of it, but nobody at the end of the year got a thank you, a pat on the back, or a Christmas card, nothing from Harvick.
The day NASCAR and all of us associated in any way with NASCAR forget its past, that's the day we don't have any future.
...2001 Daytona Speed Weeks apparently didn't get off to the greatest of starts for you and Dale.
No.
What happened?
Oh, gee. Well, I hadn't told a lot of people this, but we get to Daytona. Of course, we're down there, 10, 12 days we were down there. And Dale and Dale Jr. both had went down there early because they ran the Corvette in a 24-hour race. And so at Daytona and even Talladega, we got to where we started using 2 spotters. We'd always put somebody on the back straightaway, and I was always on the front straightaway. And back in those days, we used Bobby Hutchins as our second spotter. And he'd go over on the back straight in the grandstand because I don't care who you are. If you're up on top of that tower at the trial at Daytona and you got a car coming off of turn 4 coming toward you, you can't tell if he's on his bumper or he's 10 inches or 6 inches back. You just can't tell until he gets a little closer to trial oval. Same thing going away from him in turn 1. And I never said anything on the radio unless I was absolutely sure. If I wasn't sure, I didn't say it. So anyway, we're down there, 10, 12 days, and I never seen Earnhardt in person because every time he was on the track, I was on the spotter tower. When I got back to the garage area, he was back at his motor coach. So we had used 2 spotters for the Bud shootout, or Busch Clash, whichever it was, the Sunday before, ran that race. We'd used 2 spotters for the qualifying race on Thursday. Bobby's over there. So Friday rolls around, we got practice over on Friday. I don't know, 9 o'clock or whatever it was, and when we go out, I'm up on the spotter stand. And of course, we only use 1 spotter during practice. I'm up there by myself. And Dale takes off down pit road, and he's grumbling a little bit on the radio about the motor or something. And he gets out there, and he's running a lap or 2, and he's coming off turn 4 one time. And Casey Atwood was driving Ray Abraham's Dodge. I'm looking at number 9 Dodge at the time. And they come off 4. Well, they're getting off of 4 and they get a little closer. When I knew that Casey was to his inside corner right there, I just got on the rail and said, Dale, inside corner. Well, he come on the rail, just yelling, said, about made me wreck, goddamn it, about wrecked that 9 car, damn it, goddamn it, like that. So just raising hell at me over the radio. So I didn't say anything. I just, he's under speed, he's got the helmet on, I just let it go on one there, out there, had to have thick skin, remember? So, I get down there and turn 1, I say inside, clear low, he runs 10 or 15 laps, He does a clean cut on the back straightaway. He comes down, coasting around 3 and 4, and he stops on pit road to get a tire check there at Goodyear. Well, now he's off a racetrack. He got the radio, he got the motor shut down, he's off a racetrack. And of course, everybody in the garage area monitored us. And plus the fans, plus NASCAR. So I just told him on the radio after he shut down, I said, Dale, I'm up here by myself. I can't clear you off at turn 4. That's why we use 2 spotters during the race. Well, he didn't like it. He keyed that mic, and he didn't yell it. He screamed it, F you.
Wow.
Well, boy, that pissed me off. I mean, I was hot. And somebody told me, when he said it, Richard said Childress's eyes got about that big. Well, I come off that spotter tire. I was really close to cussing him out on the radio. I said, nah, that's the worst thing I can do.
Yeah.
Everybody listen to us, the fans, the competitors. So I come off that spotter tower, and I go in the garage, and I'm looking for him. And Richard's standing there, and I said, I quit. I said, he's not going to talk to me like that. I said, I quit. He needs to find him another spotter. And Richard says, well, calm down. I said, well, I'm calm. Richard said, well, can you help us find another spotter? I said, well, I'll try. So I went around the garage here and I found Mike Swain. Mike Swain used to drive, baby Daytona NASCARs years ago. I think he had spotted some even for Hendricks way back in the day. So I found Mike Swain and I tell him what, they're looking for a spotter. He entered the spot and he said, yeah. So I take him over and introduce him to Childress. Childress knew who he was, but told him, I said, got you a spotter, good luck. And so that was Friday before the 500. And Richard said, well, will you go up there with him tomorrow during happy hour?
So all this took place on Friday?
This was on Friday, yeah. So Richard asked me, would I go on Saturday back on the spotter tower with Mike Swain to help him spot for Earnhardt on Saturday for happy hour.
The day after the twin 125?
No. Well, the 125s were on Thursday. We had practice on Friday. That's when this happened.
Okay. Right.
Then we had happy hour going on Saturday before the 500.
Gotcha.
So he asked me if I'd go up there with Mike Swain on the spotter tower. I said, I didn't really want to. I said, well, I'll go up there with him, Richard, but I ain't talking on that damn radio. I still pissed. And see, I had spotted for Tony Stewart back when he drove Busch cars a little bit. He drove the 44 shell car, and Tony and I got along good. And matter of fact, Tony tried to get me to go with the Gibbs with him way back in the day. I didn't, but then I even spotted for Tony Stewart at an IndyCar race one time at Charlotte when he drove IndyCar out there. So anyway, after this happens, and we get up there on Saturday with Mike Swain, I'm up there, I'm listening on the radio, but I wasn't going to say anything. And I hear Earnhardt telling Mike Swain, well, you do this and you do that, and you talk and tell me this and that, and if you talk too much, I'll tell you when to shut the F up. That's what he tells him. So I thought, well, good luck to them, So that's Saturday. So I go by Tony's motor coach Saturday evening, and I told him, I said, well, I'm kind of looking for a job. Kind of told him a little bit about what happened. I quit. He said, well, I need a spotter. I said, you want a spot for me? I said, well, sure. He said, well, here's my cell phone number. Call me next week. We'll work out the details. So I was going to go to work for Tony right after that. I wasn't no worries. I was going to go with him over at Gibbs. Because I'd done some Busch stuff before over at Gibbs 4 spot for some of the Busch cars a couple of back. So anyway, so I go back to the motel that evening, take a shower, clean up. We go out to dinner and all. The next morning, get up, pack my bag, have breakfast, go to the airport, put my bags on the airplane, pre-flight the airplane, file a flight plan, check the weather and all this.
Now, who were you flying for?
Well, I had a King Air down there flying for Childress.
Okay.
Bill Patterson and some of the other guys was on the plane with me going down there and coming back. And so
this is the morning of the 500? This
is the morning of the 500, Daytona 100, 2001. So my pager goes off, and their pageman, Kevin Harvick, was a crew chief. So they want me to come to the racetrack, so I go over to the racetrack. I had nothing to do. I wasn't no hurry to get over there. So I went over and I went in the garage here, and I go up and see Kevin Hamlin. He says, well, Earnhardt wants to talk to you. I said, about what? Well, he wants you to spot for him. I said, no, I quit. He's got a spotter. I said, he ain't going to talk to me like that. I ain't going to put up with it. I said, this started my 6-year spot for him. And he's going to cuss me on the radio. I ain't going to, he's not going to do that. So he said, oh, he wants you to come over to his coach. He wants to talk to you. I said, well, you go over and talk to him. You're the crew chief. And Hamlin said, well, what do you want me to tell him? I said, you tell him what I said. So Hamlin goes over. He talks to him. He comes back 15 minutes later, whatever. He said, well, he still wants to see you. So I go on over. And old Jimbo was his coach driver. I guess you remember big old Jimbo.
Yeah, I do.
He's a really good guy. And I go over, and Jimbo was standing outside the coach. I said, yeah, I've been summoned. He said, yeah, he's been waiting for you. Had 2 chairs sitting outside the coach. Earnhardt comes out. He grabs me around my neck and arm. You know how he does. And in Earnhardt's way, he apologizes. And we sit there and talk. And he says, I know I shouldn't have said that. He said, I was up there, and I know it's hard for you to clear and this and that. And I said, well, Dale, man, I'm starting my 6-year spot for you. I said, you know how tough it is up there sometimes, and I don't want to say something to you if I'm not sure. And if you want to change something, you got to tell me. I can't read your mind. He said, yeah, I know. And he said, man, but I really appreciate it. Would you spot for me today? And I said yeah, Dale, I'll do that. And we hugged and shook hands. About brings tears to my eyes. And I'm so thankful that we got that little get-together meeting to settle that, because had we not, and I had spotted for him, it was hard enough to live with anyway, without us doing that, because that was a tough week after that day happened, So, anyway, we start the race. We're up there and spotting for him, and Tony has that big crash on the back straightaway, and they red flagged the race. And they're pulling everybody down pit road, and Dale comes off turn 4 down pit road, and he comes on the radio and says, "Danny, you're doing a good job up there." And I said, "Thank you, Dale, you are too," And then he starts talking about those workers on the roof, and he knew there was going to be a big wreck and all, So they start the race back. We go back green. We're racing, and Michael's leading, and Junior's second, and they're checked out. They're 50 yards or whatever in front of Dale. Dale's back there running third. Excuse me. And, Dale knew they were going to win. He wasn't going to catch them. But he didn't want to finish. He didn't want to go from third to 15th, So, yeah, he was blocking, He wanted them to finish 1, 2, 3. And I can tell you the last words out of Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s mouth, the last thing he said, it was about 2 or 3 laps to go. And Michael was running the high groove, and he said, "Tell Michael to run low. Tell him to run low. Tell him not to run high." So I had to go get Ty Norris and Dale said, "Tell Michael to run low, not to run high." I don't know, it was 3 or 4 laps to go, whatever it was. And so we get that last lap, he dropped.
But he never said anything else.
He never said anything else after that. That was the last words it came out of his mouth. So we get the white flag, we're going down the back straightaway, and Sterling's right on his bumper, and I think we might have been 3 wide going into 3, and I was telling him, on your bumper, clear low, and we go into 3, and he in the middle of 3, I think Sterling bumps him a little bit, and he gets his left front tire, from what I can tell, down on the flat a little bit. He comes back up, and the car gets out of shape, and he heads toward the wall. And I think Rusty was back here, and Schrader was back here, and I think he was headed toward the wall at a certain angle, and Schrader kind of hits him a little bit, and he turns it a little more different, changed the angle of the car, and he hits the wall, crashes. Race is over. Michael won it. Junior was second, And I'm sitting there, I'm looking at binoculars and everything. And when the crash, after it stops, I go back to Talladega when they had it crash to him and Bill Elliott. And I asked him on the radio, I said, "Dale, you okay? Talk to me." And I said it 3 or 4 times. He never said anything. I said, "Dale, talk to me, okay?" Never said anything. And I thought, well, maybe it's like Talladega, knocked the breath out of him. Or maybe at least a radio come unplugged, or worse, he got knocked out, And I'm still sitting there looking, the race is over, and Skinner's his teammate, and Skinner on the cool-down lap, I see Skinner slow down, come by her, so I turn my number 2 radio on Skinner's frequency. And I hear Skinner tell Richard, said, "Richard, you better get down here." Well, I knew probably pretty bad then. And then Teresa comes on the radio, and she hollers at me 2 or 3 times, and I said, "Yeah." She said, "Can you see anything?" And I'm sitting there looking at binoculars, and I see Schrader go over there and all. I didn't want to say anything over the radio, and I said, "No, honey, I can't see anything." And then, after we get out to the garage area, we find out a little later what happened, and just a sad day for NASCAR. And you always got to look at the good side of it too. A lot of good things came from it, but it's a shame that it had to cost somebody their life. Mm-hmm. But all the safety features we got there with the safer barriers and the Hans and everything else, and the way they improved the cars. But it was a sad day, one of the saddest weeks of my life. How everybody went to DEI and everybody come to our store and they had all the flowers in front of the building that week, and boy, everybody's at the shop and everybody's hanging around not saying much, just head drooping, and everybody's teary-eyed and all. And
after the accident and the end of the race, did you fly home that night?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I remember Deb Williams, we were loading the stuff up on the hauler. We had a lift gate up, and I was helping put some stuff up in the hauler. I remember Deb Williams was standing down there on the ground looking at me and kind of like, "Do I know anything?" And I just said, "No, I don't know anything for sure right then." And so after we loaded up, we go to the airport, and Bill Patterson and some of the other guys were riding with me. And we're taxiing out, and the other team planes over. I see Chocolate, and I was standing over in front of it, some of the other guys, and I see Chocolate kind of teared up. And we take off, and we're heading back to Winston-Salem out of Daytona, and I'm flying. I don't know, I'm at 25,000 feet or something wrong, and I hear one of Childress's team planes on the frequency behind me. And I think Jim Metz was flying it, I think. And so we got a frequency we can talk to plane, and it's 123.45, so it's the frequency. So I hear their call sign come up on the center, and I tell Miss, I say, come up on 123.45 on your number 2 radio. So he did, because I still hasn't heard for sure if Earnhardt was alive or not. And so I asked him, I said, have you heard anything yet? We're talking about Dale. I said, you heard anything? He said, yeah. I said, is it bad? He said, yeah. So I didn't know how bad. I thought maybe just bad. I said, I didn't want to say had he died or anything, but I said, is it as bad as it gets? And he said, yeah. So I knew right then he hadn't made it. And so we're flying back, and Bill Patterson and guys in the back of the plane. And I turned around and told Bill. I didn't know if he even knew at that time. And I told Bill, I said, so I just got word that Dale didn't make it. He said, yeah, we knew it, but we didn't want to tell you till we got on the ground back in Lexington. So that's when I officially found out.
How were you able to fly that plane?
Turn the autopilot on, and just sit back and, most time you use an autopilot anyway when you're flying, but it didn't really hit me all right then. I knew it, but I was thinking about it, but, you had to get home. You had to concentrate on what you were doing at the time, and like I said, we get to the shop that week, and everybody's around there moping and teary-eyed and all, and we go to the funeral and all. And just a sad week, and, and then we end up, after the funeral, we go to Rockingham. And we're out there practicing Rockingham. And Harvick gets in the car. He gets a ride, and we're doing practice. And practice just had finished. And Danny Lawrence comes on the radio and Tim says, hey, Tony Stewart wants you to come over as motor coach after practice. God, I forgot all about it.
Yeah.
Tony and I had worked a deal out, and I was going to get a spot for him. I forgot all about that in lieu of everything that happened. I did. And so I said, geez. So I come down off the spot stand, I go over at the garage here and put my radio up, go over to the driver owner lot, and I go into Tony's coach and go in, he's sitting in there. And I said, Tony, he said, man, I thought you were going to call me this week. And I said, man, Tony, man, in lieu of everything that just happened all week, I said, man, I just forgot about it. I apologize. He says, I said, right now, I feel like my loyalty ought to be at RCR. I said, man, I feel like I ought to stay there right now. And I said, I hope you understand. He said, I do. I completely understand. I appreciate you telling me that. And I've got a lot of respect for Tony Stewart for doing it. And so I stayed there with RCR with Harvick, So that's when Harvick started driving.
Tell us about Atlanta and Kevin's win there.
What was it like the third race, I think, or something? Yeah, we're in a 29 car, and boy, that's an exciting day, And he beats Jeff Gordon. Yeah, because Dale had come to a close finish just like that with Bobby Labonte a couple years before in Atlanta, just about identical type finish, and we racing Jeff, and boy, yeah, we take that win down there at Atlanta, and boy, that's when everybody was holding their 3 fingers up, before the race, during the race, after the race, for just about all year.
Yeah,
won that race, and that was a fun day. And when Kevin got that ride after we lost Dale, me and Richard and Kevin, we did the double that year. We did every Cup race, we did every Busch race all year long. That was hectic. We'd be in Pocono, for example. After practice on Saturday at Pocono, we got NASCAR's Learjet. We fly to Pikes Peak, Colorado. We'd run Pikes Peak Busch race on Saturday night. We'd fly back to Pocono. I get back in the motel room about 2:30 in the morning. Had to be at the racetrack at 7. Had to spot all day. Then I had to fly the team plane home at night. So that took for a long day. But we did every race that year. And I remember that year, Kevin didn't. I took my job seriously, and I'm not saying it was all because of me. Kevin's a good driver, but we didn't have one wrecked race car in the Cup Series or the Busch Series all year long. Not one. We had one DNF in the Busch Series all year long. That was the last race at Homestead, lost engine. We had one DNF in the Cup car all year long. I think that was the second race at Pocono, lost engine. That's the only 2 DNFs we had all year, one in each series all year long, but no wrecked race cars. And that very first year, Kevin won a Winston Cup Rookie Year. He was top 10 Winston Cup points and won the Busch Championship that year. Now, Kevin, Kevin's medaled a lot since those days. He was young and brazen way back then. And I remember we'd be at Sonoma, and he would be complaining about the car, and I believe Kevin Hamlin was crew chief in that then. Yeah, he was. And I remember Kevin come on the radio and say, "Boy, just drive that car, you know."
I need to take this.
You want to take a break?
Yeah.
I'll keep it up.
Hello?
I'll keep it up.
Yeah. So
Keep going.
I remember it was at Sonoma, and Kevin Hamlin was crew chief. Like I said, Kevin was very brazen and trying to make a name of himself. And back in his day, and he was complaining about the car, and Kevin just come on and said, "Just drive the car, boy." Well, Harvick didn't like it. Boy, he let loose on Kevin Hamlin. I mean, he let loose on him. So that year, and like I said, we won the Busch Championship, Winston Cup Rookie Year, top 10 Winston Cup. And before every driver I've ever worked for, Ricky Rudd, Terry LeBonnie, Sterling Marlin, John Andretti, Hutch Strickland, Jimmy Spencer, Dale Earnhardt, all of them at the end of the year, the guys that went track, they'd give them a little bonus at the end of the year, depending on how you did, And I didn't expect anything. It wasn't about the money part of it, but nobody at the end of the year got a thank you, a pat on the back, or a Christmas card, or nothing from Harvick. I mean, I remember Todd was our crew chief on the Busch car, Todd Berrier.
Yeah.
And he didn't even get nothing, not even a Christmas card or a thank you pat on the back. Didn't even bring a dozen donuts to the track or nothing, but So worked with Harvick there for a few years, and then later on, Harvick married Delana.
Yeah.
And I knew her dad pretty well. He was a good guy, but he used to be a race driver years ago. But when he lived in Currents, when he started his own truck team and then his Busch team, he hired Rick Corelli to come and be his, I guess, team manager there, help run the truck team all for him. And this was a few years later. And Corelli used to race trucks in the truck series, and when Harvick was running the truck series back in the day, and I think Corelli had a bad wreck at Memphis one year, and pretty bad, about got killed in it, and hurt his eye real bad. So I think he had bad vision in one eye. So we hired Corelli to come and run his truck team. Moved from, I think Corelli lived in Colorado, around Denver somewhere. And the story I heard, whatever he was paying Corelli, I don't know, but the story I heard, he was going to hire Corelli to spot for him on RSR to help supplement his salary. Of course, that money wasn't coming out of Harvick's pocket; it was coming out of RCR's pocket. So basically, I got fired. And he hired Corelli to spot for him, I guess, to supplement his salary. And that didn't sit too well with me at the time,
Right.
It didn't sit with me at all. I thought, if I wasn't doing my job, I could understand it, but the record spoke for itself.
Right.
And so I remember Mike Dillon called me and said, "Well, Harvick wants to make a change this year. He's going to get Rick Corelli's spot for him." So, I didn't like that too good. And
Well, did that have anything to do with the departure from RCR?
Well,
And when did that happen?
not exactly that time, because what happened, Gil Martin was there, and they got Harry Earnhardt to come and drive the Busch car some. So they wanted me to work with Gil Martin and Harry Earnhardt, so I did. And Kerry's a super nice guy.
Yeah.
So I had spotted for Senior. I spotted for Dale Jr. one time at Homestead when he expelled Steve Mill.
Yeah.
And I spotted for him, and I spotted for Kerry. So I spotted for all the Earnhardts except Jeffrey.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I even tried to get Richard to let me spot for Jeffrey last year at Talladega, but it didn't work out. But I'd have been kind of cool to spot for all the Earnhardts, But so I stayed there with Kerry and Gil for a year or two, and then after that, I ended up going to Henry. No, I went to DEI. I worked at DEI with Michael Waltrip and then Eric Amarella.
Oh, okay.
I worked with them, spotted for both of them for a little while, and then I went to Hendricks with Brian Vickers for a little while. And then I went to Penske with Ryan Newman for a little while, and got to be good friends with Walt Zarnicki and Roger and all them guys.
Well, sooner or later, he's going to be able to keep a job.
Yeah. I mean, I worked for a lot of crew chiefs over the years. Kurt Schomerlin and then Dale Emmon, and we had Jake Elder and Darrell Bryant down there for a year, and then Travis Carter, and and then Larry, and then Kevin Hamlin. So were a lot of good crew chiefs over here. Jake was a hoot when he was crew chief down there.
Yeah.
But I was kind of like Jake. I guess I had as many uniforms as Jake Elder did, so I worked for a lot of different teams. But yeah.
Well, tell me a good Jake Elder story.
Oh, gee. Jake, he had a temper,
Yeah.
He'd be in the shop sometimes, and I only went down to the shop late in the evenings. Most of the time I was at the airport flying airplanes, going somewhere, demonstrating airplanes. But I go down to the shop, and help out what I could in the evening. Jake get mad, and he'd throw a hammer across the floor on the car or something all that time. And we used to fly a lot of places, and Jake would be on the plane with us. And I remember I sat down and talked to Jake one time. I think Jake was supposed to, if I'm not mistaken, he was supposed to go one year, I think, to Le Mans and help Billy Hagan or something, I think. They were talking about doing that, going back over there. But anyway, we were at the airport one time, and I got Jake over side, and we sat there and talking. And I told you, I said, Jake, man, I said, you need to calm down a little bit. I said, all these guys, I said, you get a lot more out of them and respect from them if you just praise them a little bit, and instead of raising hell at them all the time, And he'd shake his head, yeah, I know, you're right. He was just so subtle, like a little puppy, when I was talking to him. But I like Jake,
Sure.
Yeah, I got good with him. I remember we went to Darlington one time, and Sterling was driving the car, and I stood that little hot dog stand there on pit road. I spun from top of it, and so we come in the pit, and they was changing the forward tire and putting gas in it. And I don't know what position we were in at the time, but the pace car was about to get lapped. And I saw him drop the jack, And I said, man, you need to go, like that, because the pace car, I didn't want to get lapped. Well, he pulled out, and he hit a car coming in the pit when he was pulling out. And Jake just looked up at me and gave me that evil look, and I thought, man, boy, I messed up now, But he never really said much after that. But man, I went down there and apologized to him after the race. I said, man, I just got excited. I didn't want us to get lapped, But so that's one of the stories I can tell you about Jake. But
when did you get out of the sport, or are you still doing it?
No, well, I used to help Burt Myers on a modified some. I mean, I started in Cup back when weekends off and stuff and all. I would help Burt Myers and stuff and. In the modifieds. And Burt run Thompson, Connecticut, and Loud, New Hampshire, and New Smyrna, and Bowman Gray, and all the tracks around local, South Boston. But I guess as far as Cup, I think it was 07. It was about my last year in Cup. Yeah.
Now, how are you spending most of your time these days?
When I was flying for a company up in Mount Airy until about 3 years ago, I flew for them for just about 10 years. And then I just retired. The guy I was flying for, he was really good to me, treated me like family, paid me good, and we flew all over the country. His hobby was bucking bulls, and we went all over the country, rodeos and stuff. I mean, I'm talking California, Oregon, Oklahoma, Texas, Chicago, New York, everywhere. And he was really good to me, and I flew for about 10 years, and several years back, he had a massive heart attack and died at 56 years old.
Oh, man.
And then, so his wife took over. And she didn't treat me so much like family. And now she's got all the power and all the money, and she started doing everything just 180 degrees the way he did. And she wanted to get another airplane, so we parted company. And so it's time for me to retire anyway, because I flew for 50-plus years, and all. So I retired.
So what is your first love? Flying or racing?
Well, both, because I had the best of both worlds. Mm-hmm. I got to do what I loved as far as flying, and I got to do what I loved as far as the sport. Working with in NASCAR, meeting great people, making great friends, and gotten to travel all over the country, and even to Australia and Japan a couple of times. And I remember I went to Japan the first time with Travis in the Smoking Joe car, and Hideo Fukuyama drove the car, and he didn't speak no English.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we was going to communicate and me spot for him. And so he just a tiny bit of English he could understand. Super, super nice guy.
Oh, yeah, I met him.
Yeah. And so I was talking to him, I told him, I said, you got to understand, oil on the track slippy. So we had to come up with terms like that he might could understand, and that was pretty funny. And he was a nice guy, and he was running fairly decent over there. And what's his name was driving Bud Moore's car over there?
Wally Dallenbach.
Wally Dallenbach.
Yeah.
And Wally Dallenbach took him out. And Bud Moore's garage was near ours, and we knew a bunch of guys. Of course, I knew Bud Moore all my life, and we Julio kind of befriended them a little bit too, along with our guys. And after the race, I remember he gave everybody on our team a little Japanese gift and a little bag and all. And he had some left over, and he gave some to Bud Moore's guys, and he had some extra ones. He said, "No Wally Dallenbach." He wanted to make sure Wally Dallenbach didn't get one. Wally took him out, but yeah. And then went over there, the second time went over with Earnhardt in the AC Delco car. And I think that was the first time we ever put on rain tires, because we practiced in the rain over there one time. Remember that? Had the brake lights and windshield wipers on. And it didn't race in the rain, but we practiced in the rain because it rained one day. And so like I said, get to travel the world a little bit and met some great people. So, yeah, I did it for, 25 plus years, I guess.
Yeah. Was it hard for you to walk away from the sport?
No, not really. I mean, I bought a boat one time, and I kept down Lake Norman. I bought a Sea Ray. I had a Sea Ray 290 Sundasser. Didn't get to use it much because it's gone all the time. And I remember Buddy Parrott had one. And in the back of his boat, he named it Race Relief. That's what he had on the back of his boat. And me and Buddy are still friends to this day. And so, bought that boat. When I bought it, was going to try to name it. Me and my wife was going to try to put a name on it. And I was wanting to name it Starship, because Beechcraft back in the day had came up with an airplane called Starship. It was kind of before its time, it was a kind of exotic-looking airplane. And I thought that'd be a cool name to put on a boat, Starship. But she didn't like it. So we kind of hem-hawing around trying to find a name. We never agreed on a name. And I just finally told her, I said, why don't we just name it Dip Ship? so we never did name it. And so, but we got to enjoy the boat a little bit. I remember one time when I was working with Travis, Spencer lived on the lake, and Spencer threw a party for the team one day down at his house. So we ride my boat down there. And Travis is down there and all. And I remember coming up to the dock and tie my boat up there at Spencer's dock. And I remember Travis standing there with Spencer, and he come and said, "You know something's wrong when your spotter's got a bigger boat than the driver." But I'd done it so long, like I said, and my wife wanted to do things, and so it was time to retire and get out, and I was getting older, and so we do some traveling now, and all. So
good.
So yeah, so
good deal.
But yeah, I do miss it, but I kind of. You live out of a suitcase in a hotel room for that many years and travel. I mean, I get on an airplane, I said, which track are we going to this week? You got to be kind of monotonous sometimes, I got a couple of little things I can tell you about Harry Gant real quick, if you got time.
How about it?
Sure.
Harry Gant and I became, pretty good friends, and I flew Harry a fair amount of time, in an airplane I'd sold him. And, Mike Carr used to fly for him, and Eddie Mesicut flew for him some, and Harry was a great guy, but Harry's pretty thrifty. Pretty thrifty. So was Kel Yarborough and Ricky Rudd to somewhat extent. But all of them are great guys, and like I said, Ricky and I are still good friends. So was Harry, and I hadn't seen Kel in many years. But I flew Harry to Daytona one time. There's a couple of stories I'll tell you about Harry, but I flew Harry to Daytona one time. And we get down there, and Harry's, like I said, he's pretty thrifty, and he's too tight to get me in my own room, so I have to room with Harry. So the next morning we get up, and how people order room service, in their hotel room, and when they get done, a lot of times they'll just set their tray out in the hallway. So we get up the next morning going to a racetrack, and we're walking down the hallway. There's a lot of these trays sitting in the hallway where people order room service. Walking along, Harry looks down and says, "There's a perfectly good biscuit." And he picks it up and starts eating it. Yeah. And I just shake my head. And then one time I was flying Harry to Atlanta. I was going to Atlanta Speedway. And right beside Atlanta had this little airport called Terra Field.
Yeah.
And this was back before they extended the runway and all. They've extended it since then. And it was a short runway, and it was a narrow runway. And the weather was marginal. And I was going to, and they didn't have, at that time, didn't have an instrument approach into there. So I was going to go into Hartsville and land. We was going to get a rent-a-car driver. And Eddie Macecup was flying Turley Bonnet that day. And he had just he was getting ready to land at Turley. He said, hey, man, you can get in over here. The weather's not that bad. You can get in over here VFR. So I said, great, thanks. I told air traffic control I need to go back to Terra Field. So they gave me radar vectors over there. And Eddie and Terry had already landed. And sure enough, the weather wasn't all that bad. And I was going to land. It was raining a little bit. Had a crosswind. And I turned final in Harry's airplane. It was a Piper Cheyenne 1. It's a prop jet. And Harry always rode co-pilot with me. And Peggy, his wife, rode in the back. Rick Wilson, his wife, always rode with us. So I turned final in there. And I go to turn the windshield wipers on because it's raining. When the windshield wipers go, instead of doing this, they turn 90 degrees and doing this. So they're not doing me any good. So I just turn them off. Well, I go to put the flaps down, the full flaps to land. Well, the flaps won't come down.
Uh-oh.
Well, and I'm coming up on the end of the runway now. And I'm a little high and I'm a little hot. Well, the runway's wet and it's short and I got a crosswind. Safety comes first. So I just make a go around. And I come all the way back around and make a longer final approach, knowing that the flaps are not going to come down. So now I know to slow the airplane a bit more. And I come down and I land it, no problem. We're taxiing in, and Harry says, why'd you make that go around? So Harry, I said, well, we're on a short runway. It's a wet runway. I said, we got a crosswind. The flaps wouldn't come down. I was high and hot. And I said, safety always comes first. Instead of taking a chance, I just made a go around, slow it down on the second approach. Yeah, but you could have made it. I said, well, yeah, maybe so. Yeah, but you could have made it. You could have made it. I said, well, maybe so. I said, but we're on the ground now and it's safe. Yeah, but you could have made it. See, what he was worried about is that extra fuel it took to go around to make it go around. So we taxi in there and I tell him, I said, well, Harry, I'll tell you what. Tomorrow morning when we get to the track, I'm going to go into your garage. I'm going to take the rear spoiler off your back of your race car. And I want to see how deep you drive it in turn one with no deep rear spoiler in my race car. He can relate to that, you see. But, yeah, so Harry had a lot of fun. And then one time we were going to Bike Week at Daytona, me and Lauren Edwards. And Lauren Edwards was a Piedmont airline pilot back today. Mm-hmm. And he lived at Lake Norman, about 2 doors down from Earnhardt when he lived on Lake Norman. And a lot of times he would fly Earnhardt. Mm-hmm. So me and Lauren Edwards were going to Bike Week, and Harry was going to go with us. Well, it was cold. And I had a Jeep, a Grand Cherokee Limited, and I had a motorcycle trailer behind it. I had my motorcycle loaded on the trailer. I go to Statesville Airport, and I meet Lauren over there, and Harry's there. And I said, Harry, come on, we'll put yours on the trailer, and we'll go to Lauren's house, put his on it. And he says, now I'm going to ride. Man, it's too damn cold to ride. I ain't riding. Well, I'm going to ride. He had his leather coat on, his chaps and everything. He was going to follow us. So, meet Lauren there. Harry followed us down to Lauren's house. We're going to load Lauren's motorcycle at his house, and then we're going to go to Daytona. Harry's going to ride behind us, follow us. Well, we get down there within less than a mile or half mile probably from Lauren's house. Harry years ago used to be a carpenter. Mm-hmm. And Harry's following us, and we're getting ready to turn down this road where Lauren lives down near Lake Norman. And Harry looks over as a house he had helped build it one time years ago, and he wasn't paying no attention. Of course, I slowed down to make his turn and go down this little road where Lauren's house. And Harry looked up and he's about to run the back of my motorcycle trailer. So he turns and he lays that motorcycle down. I hear it hit the ground. And I look in the mirror, and the motorcycle out on the road, and he's laying in a ditch. And so we pull him. I said, golly, Lauren, Harry just crashed. I said, call 911. So we go down, Harry laying in the ditch. He got a little mud and dirt on him, motorcycle laying on the road running. Lauren turns it off, and Lauren called out. He's sitting there, he's moaning, and he's groaning a little bit. And he said, help me up. I said, no, I said, just lay there. We got the ambulance coming. Lay there. By this time, other people had stopped. And he kept on insisting, so I helped him up. I said, come on, get my car up here. And Lauren's house just right down the street here. We'll take you down there and clean you up, and I'll drive over to Mooresville, the hospital, and get you checked up. And Lauren just ride your motorcycle down to his house. No, I want to ride, he says. I want to ride. Said, no, come on, get it. No, I want to ride. So we had to help him on his motorcycle. He was sore. He was hurting. So, he insisted. I couldn't talk him out of it. So we ride down to Lauren's house, pull in the driveway. He goes there and he goes to the bathroom. He cleans up, washes his hands up, and cleans up mud off. he didn't have any gloves on, so he scratched his hands a little bit. But he had his leather coat and his chaps and his boots and everything else and the helmet on. So we loaded Lawrence motorcycle on a trailer, and I said, come on, hop the car, I'm going to take you over here to the hospital to check out. No, I feel pretty good, I'm going to ride. I said, no, man, let's go over and check out. I'm okay, I'm going to ride. I said, okay. So we get in my Jeep and motorcycle trailer, we head down I-77 going to Daytona. Harry's riding a motorcycle behind us. We get down, and I'm watching the whole time in the mirror, and we cross 85 down there in Charlotte, heading toward Columbia. We're going to pick up 95 down there out of Columbia. And we hadn't been far across 85 down there. And I see Harry back there kind of doing this, he's swinging around. And he passes me. He throws his hand up like that, and he pulls over the side of the road there on the shoulder. The motorcycle lays it against the guardrail, and he falls off the motorcycle. I said, oh, crap, Lauren. I said, man, you better call the ambulance and call 911. I go over there, and he's turning kind of yellow. I thought he was going to croak on me on the side of I-77 down there. And he kind of come to, and he come back out. I said, Harry, just lay still. We got the ambulance coming. And I thought I was going to him get mouth-to-mouth resuscitation one time, mouth-to-mouth. And he come to and said, help me up. I said, no, just lay there. So he kept on, and I finally helped him. I got him. I said, sit down in my car. He said, sit down right here. So I got him in the car seat. He sat there in the car seat. And he was kind of turning, yelling on. And he passed out on me a couple of times. I thought he was going to croak on me. I really did. I was worried. Mm-hmm. So the ambulance comes. They put him in the ambulance. They take him to the hospital. We followed the ambulance over to the hospital there in Charlotte. I tried to call his wife, Peggy, and she wasn't there. So I get a hold of Larry Pollard, Yeah. Larry was, son-in-law owned LP Gear at the time. And Larry and I are good friends. So anyway, Larry shows up to the hospital. Well, he's in there, and they got him in there, and he's got all his clothes off of him, got him off, and he's got a sheet over him. He's there laying on that gurney in the emergency room. He said, man, it's cold. It's cold. He's there shaking. And we stayed there 4 or 5 hours. I didn't want to leave him, And I think Peggy finally showed up and everything, and finally we had a place rented down at Spruce Creek, a house we was going to stay in. And finally he said, well, y'all just go on. Ain't nothing y'all do here. So, and Larry Pollard was there, and Peggy showed up and all. So me and Lauren, we finally left. We drove on down to Daytona. We get there at night, we unload the bikes and our bags, take a shower and get something to eat and go to bed. Next morning, get up. I said, well, I'm going to call and check on Harry. Well, I called the hospital up there in Charlotte. I said, Harry Gant's room, please. We ain't got no Harry Gant. I said, what do you mean? Ain't no Harry Gant in the restaurant. I said, he is. I just got him in here yesterday afternoon. He's there. He was in the emergency room. They was going to operate on him. They said he broke 2 or 3 ribs and said they think he ruptured his spleen. That's what they told me. So they thought he was going to have to do an operation. I said, yeah, he's there. No, he checked out at 8:30 this morning. I said, what? So I called Harry on his cell phone. He's home working on his fence at home. I thought, my God, talk about one tough son of a gun. Harry's tough. And then
not to mention stubborn.
Yeah, stubborn, yeah. Not to mention stubborn. He'd run on his fence. We got 2 or 3 broken ribs, and they thought he'd ruptured his spleen, too, That's why he was turning yellow. So, anyway, 2 or 3 weeks after that, every time we go to the racetrack, he told everybody in the garage there, they all heard about that motorcycle wreck. He told everybody in the garage that I brake checked him. I said, Harry, you wasn't paying attention. You went out telling everybody I brake checked you. I didn't brake check you. But, Harry, there's Harry Gant's way and there's everybody else's way. I was up at his shop one time, a long time ago. He said, all Harley Davidson's supposed to be black, all Corvette's supposed to be red, and all Cadillac's supposed to be white. And I thought, well, why? I looked over there. Well, he had a black Harley Davidson, a red Corvette, and a white Cadillac sitting there. That's Harry Gant's.
Yeah.
That's Harry Gant for you. So, anyway, it was a lot of fun with Harry.